Thank you, Jenny, for reading from Genesis 16. So I'm actually going to pick up a few pages over in Genesis 21 in verse 8. It is a continuation of the story of Hagar, Sarah, and Abraham. About 14 years have passed since Genesis 16. So in verse 8, it says, "The child grew and was weaned, and on that day Isaac was weaned. Abraham held a great feast, but Sarah saw that the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham was mocking. And she said to Abraham, 'Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac.' The matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son. But God said to him, 'Do not be so distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring.' Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. She went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and sat down about a bowshot away, for she thought, 'I cannot watch the boy die.' And as she sat there, she began to sob. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, 'What is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation.' Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy as he grew up. He lived in the desert and became an archer. While he was living in the desert of Paran, his mother got a wife for him from Egypt." Okay, welcome to Women's Day. I'm so glad that you guys could be here with us. If it's your first time, I'm so glad that you could make it. And if you're a familiar face, I'm so glad to see your face again. When I think about Women's Day, I think of a few things. Number one, everyone looks cute. On average, people are dressing a little cuter than they normally do. I don't know why, it's definitely a thing. And may I be the first to say, it's working, you look great. There's beautiful decoration. I don't know necessarily why we need it. I can't really explain it to my husband if I were to try to explain it, but we need it, right? It's just a thing. At some point, someone on stage will say, "Isn't it great to be together as women?" I actually haven't heard it yet, so I'll say it. Isn't it great to be together as women? And number 4. There's usually some Bible story or a story about women that is beautiful and uplifting with a strong female lead. So when I heard that the theme for Women's Day was seen and heard, of course I thought about Hagar. She's this pregnant woman in distress. God comes to her and she says to him, "You are the God that sees me so good." I knew that the story involved Abraham and Sarah, and I love those dudes. So I was like, I had a little pep in my step as I was going to write this sermon, but then I started reading, and I started studying it out more. All right, so we got some manipulation, infertility, some major marriage mistakes, single parenting, lying, greed, physical, emotional, sexual abuse. Okay, wait a second. This is not the story that our tender female minds should be listening to. We are dressed too nice for this kind of story. But you know what? I know a lot of women in this room. This is real life. These issues are near to us. Some of you are walking into this Sunday service, and you see this list, and you're like, "Yep, that's me right now." As women, we hold a lot. There are challenges that are unique to women. There are like diseases and syndromes that are so unique to women, and you're like, "Why, God?" Like, why did that happen? But God absolutely sees us. I want to let you know that God is seeing you here today. He sees your hurt. He sees your doubt. He sees every ounce of effort it took for you to be here today. We can hold all these things and look cute too. In the past, when I would come across a story like this in the Bible, a story that is uncomfortable and makes you wonder, what on earth is this story doing in the Bible? I had a very simple solution. Okay, I would read that part of the Bible, feel uncomfortable, flip 200 pages over to the New Testament, and forget about what I just read. I just really wanted some feel-good, inspirational stuff. I didn't have space in my understanding of God or Christianity for the messy stuff. If I just, flipped over, that way I didn't need to mentally wrestle with the things that made me have doubts. When I was a young Christian, I thought that I couldn't have doubts. So to avoid the internal conflict, I would just apply my technique, flip and forget. So the technique worked for a little bit, but then the hard times came, and I learned that the Bible is about real life. So often we see these people of faith as incredible heroes and examples of virtue. However, this story gives a clear view into the very human and sinful decisions that Sarah and Abraham made. I believe that these stories are there so that we can see the mistakes and learn from their errors, but also so that we can see the character of God and see what he's inviting us into. So let's get back into the story. Quick recap of all the characters and some background on them if you're unfamiliar with the story. We got Abraham, 85 years old at the beginning of Genesis 16. God says a great nation will come through him and his children. All peoples on earth will be blessed through him. And then he has a name change from Abram to Abraham. He's married to Sarah. Sarah, she is past childbearing age. She's beautiful. She has a name change from Sarai to Sarah, and she's the eventual mother of Isaac. Okay, next. Hagar, mother to Ishmael, female slave, Egyptian, and Hagar probably joins Abraham and Sarah back in Genesis 12. In Genesis 12, Sarai and Abram go to Egypt because there was a famine in the land. And before they get there, Abram says to his wife, okay, you can barely see that, but in verse 11, I'll just read it. I know that you are a woman beautiful in appearance, and when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Say that you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake. Okay, let me just pause. How beautiful must Sarai be for the Egyptians to want to kill her husband? And she's old, it's pretty impressive. I wish I could see what she looks like. Anyways, we don't know for certain that Abram would have been killed, but his little scheme worked. In verse 16, the verse reads, and for her sake, Pharaoh dealt well with Abram, and he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. Then later, Pharaoh is basically cursed because of Abram's lie, so Pharaoh sends them away with all that they have back to their homeland. This is the beginning of Hagar's story, one of many Egyptian slaves, property gained through fear and deceit. So Hagar was born and raised in Egypt. She likely worshipped Egyptian gods. This means that she was probably unfamiliar with the God of Abraham and Sarah. So back in chapter 16, we can imagine Sarah humming and hawing and probably saying to herself, this whole offspring thing is taking too long. I can't imagine how God will provide here. Even though he said he would, I guess I need to take things into my own hands. And as a result, they take this young woman who is in a foreign country, and they sin against her and against God. Hagar was a foreigner in a land not her own. And instead of being cared for, she was oppressed and abused. In verse 4 of chapter 16, it says that when Hagar saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress, so on Sarah. We can only imagine, because it doesn't actually say what Hagar must have been thinking in that moment when she looked with contempt on Sarah. I think there was something about the loss of the future she had desired. Sure, she knew she was a slave, but maybe she was in love with someone else. I know that she certainly did not want to sleep with an old man who was not of her people. The future she had imagined and hoped for was stolen because of the sin of Abraham and Sarah. And on top of all this, she had to flee to the desert in such a vulnerable state, pregnant, because of how harshly she was treated. And that's where we come to the exciting part, where God appears personally to Hagar, and she says, "You are a God of seeing. Truly, I have seen him who looks after me." Oh, you are a God of seeing. Truly, I've seen him who looks after me. What makes this verse so incredible is that Hagar is not coming up with a new and special name for God to switch it up or to be poetic, okay? Hagar doesn't worship the God of Abraham. She is simply describing her experience with this God. She says to this God that she doesn't know, "You see me, and I see you. I see you taking care of me." Regardless of all the ways God's people continue to mess up, God appears to each of us personally in our sorrows, in our traumas, in our grief and vulnerable moments. There is no doubt that God sees the oppressed and cares deeply for them, whether they know him or not. God doesn't choose to correct Hagar and tell him who he is or what he is called. Instead, he allows her to experience him as one who looks after her. It's so beautiful to see God in this way. And honestly, I think we are even more blessed because we know God. We know that he is the God that sees, but we know him in so many more ways. He's the God who provides, Jireh, #Maverick City Music. God is our healer, our shepherd, our creator, and my favorite, he is our Father. How blessed we are to know our God in these diverse ways. In 2020, like many other couples, my husband and I conceived our first child. I knew that it might take some time to get pregnant, so we were surprised to find out that we conceived almost immediately. We were so excited, because at that point we were only holding off on kids because I just wanted to finish my master's degree. I had completed my baby registry like months before we had even started trying. Needless to say, we were so excited. Cautiously though, because I knew the likelihood of miscarriage. I had 3 friends alone in that year who were trying and had miscarried. But for me, pregnancy was going smoothly. Every checkup was good, blood pressure was good, I could feel her moving around, ultrasounds looked good, no gestational diabetes, all the things that you think could go wrong, everything looked good. Now, once I got to 22 weeks, I actually would start checking weekly what the chances of my daughter surviving outside the womb would be. I literally would check her viability every week. So with each passing week, I would feel a little more relief. As we approached her due date, I knew that she would be in my arms soon. Stillbirth never crossed my mind. Then the day after her due date, she stopped moving. We went to the hospital, ready to hear what we already knew in our hearts. Sophia's heart had stopped beating. I don't know that I could ever accurately share what that moment was like. My mom on my right side, my husband on the other, and we just burst into tears. I had to be induced, and I began to labor for 35 hours until they eventually decided to do a C-section because I wasn't progressing any further. She was born, and I remember the moment I saw her. She literally took my breath away. She was so beautiful. This is Sofia Alejandra. Beautiful, I know. What I've noticed is that in general, it's not easy to sit in discomfort. For me, that's why I implemented my flip and forget technique. It's not easy to sit in the discomfort of someone's pain. Some of the things I think we're tempted to believe or say when we see someone going through hardship is something along the lines of, everything happens for a reason. God is in control. Blessings are coming soon. There's a lesson in everything. I don't think these sayings are wrong in themselves, but I think they can be an easy way of shrugging off what God might be inviting us to experience through that, through the pain that we share with one another as sisters in Christ. After Sophia passed, Benjamin and I went to Grief Share, a Christian grief support group. When I walked into the room, I saw that it was mainly filled with sweet old ladies with short white hair who had recently lost their husbands. Of course, there were exceptions to that, but that was the main population. I felt extremely out of place as a Latina woman in my 20s at the time. But wow, did I ever feel close to those people at the end of the 13 weeks of weekly meetings. I felt deeply bonded over our grief. I'm literally eternally grateful for the friends God allowed us to meet who also experienced stillbirth. The Tokarskis and their sweet boy Emmanuel. And the Elams who lost their boys, James and Joshua. Suffering can be such an isolating experience, but I'm so grateful that we were able to share our unique experiences. God created us as people who have the ability to hold suffering and joy at the same time. We shouldn't dismiss one to have the other. This is my son, Judah. I wish you could see that more clearly because it's so cute. He's over there. If you want a smile, he will give you a smile. He's like the happiest little dude in the world. I love being Judah's mom. I love watching him grow. There's truly not a day that goes by that I don't think about my daughter, Sophia, and the life that she was supposed to live as an incredible big sister. In Deuteronomy 24:17, it reads, "Do not deprive the alien or the fatherless of justice, or take the cloak of the widow as a pledge. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. That is why I command you to do this." Hagar's story is essentially a foretelling of the Israelites in Egypt and their experience in the book of Exodus. If you're not familiar with that story, definitely watch Prince of Egypt. Fantastic movie, great soundtrack. God redeems the Israelites from slavery and reminds them over and over again, do not treat people the way Hagar was treated and the way you were once treated. Instead, God says, see the alien, the fatherless, and the widow the same way I saw Hagar, and look after them. God is consistent through the scriptures. He is a God who seeks justice and hates evil and longs for his people to partner with him in blessing the world. God sees you in your pain and says, join me in seeing and hearing the pain of the world. Join me in looking after them because you know what it feels like. What a better group of humans to look after the world than women. I think we carry the image of God much more easily than men in this regard. Shout out to men in our lives who have incredible gifts, but here I think that we can step up to the plate more naturally as those who see, hear, and take care of the Hagars in our lives. It's not an easy calling. It will cost us something, but we can learn from one another and partner with each other in how to do this. You know, Miss Jackie is an incredible example of us, and she's still taking care of us today, right? Long after Abraham and Sarah Jesus comes along and shares the same desire as his heavenly Father. In line with their heart for all people, Jesus makes the ultimate sacrifice so that we can all experience complete saving and healing when he returns. After I finish here, it will be a time of communion. And as we remember the sacrifice of Jesus, let us reflect on how we can also partner with God. We will watch a video, and then you could take communion after that. So to end here, let us be women who lean into the discomfort of life. Let us be women who hold pain, suffering, along with joy and healing. Let us be women who see and hear the oppressed and vulnerable in our communities. And let us be women who partner with God in taking care of them. May God bless you and keep you. Amen.